Have you ever been so frustrated about something that you just have to talk about it? That's why I'm here. I'm Jade, and today I'm going to talk about Hazbin Hotel, specifically Season 2. Hazbin Hotel is an extremely popular show that put its own spin on heaven, hell, and the everlasting soul. It's in a musical format and asks the question, what if someone could change after they're already in hell? Forewarning, I am going to be covering everything. I'm going to be covering Season 1, I'm going to be covering Season 2, talking about all the characters and all the spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, please leave. This video is not for you, but if you don't mind and you're just here for the ride, enjoy. So Season 1's structure of Hazbin Hotel was pretty perfect. It's simple, it's cohesive, the plot makes sense, and it establishes everything it needs to about the characters and the show. Effectively, Charlie Morningstar founds a hotel in hell to rehab sinners so they may be redeemed and get into heaven. Her biggest challenge is that angels come down once a year to exterminate souls and keep heaven's population under control, and the angels actually really enjoy doing it. It's not really what you'd expect from an angel, and that's what makes it really fun, is that it's not heavenly and divine and great like you'd think it is. There is some corruption behind the scenes. The show's B-plot involves the different sinners and the hotel learning how to trust each other and believe in the hotel and their places together in the hotel. You see them building relationships and learning how to trust each other and how to become friendly despite the concept of they're not really being friends in hell. Season 1 also uses very short subplots, usually one episode, sometimes even less, to establish and explore sinners' relationships with other sinners who aren't affiliated with the hotel. And it also shows their relationships with overlords outside the hotel, including Alistair's rivalry with Vox, Valentino owning Angel Dust's soul, and Alistair having some mysterious deal that he wants to get out of. By the end of Season 1, the head of the Exorcist army, Adam, First Man Adam, is killed, leaving heaven vulnerable to attack. Meanwhile, a sinner, Serpentius, is redeemed. The V's also feel excited by Alistair's near death and express that the future of hell belongs to the V's.
The future of hell belongs to the V's.
Given that the V's are the primary bad force in hell, it was a really interesting setup because I couldn't wait to see what they were gonna do. I also couldn't wait to see what the hotel was gonna be like now that redemption was possible. Was anyone gonna know about it? Is that what Season 2 was gonna be about? It was just a really great setup. But that potential kind of fell a little short. My general feelings after watching and rewatching it are a bit of confusion and frustration. I want to break Season 2 down and discuss the plot, the characters, and the music. And then I'll end this video with what I would have done differently. So I'd like to start out by talking about the plot of Season 2. Specifically, I'm just going to recap the A-plot. I don't really want to talk about subplots, B-plots, or anything that took a while. I just want to focus on the main story. Season 2 opened with the hotel being immensely successful, but only because it was known for arming up and killing exorcists, and thwarting the last extermination. This was a big deal because it had never really happened before that they were able to fight back against the exorcists in a large-scale way. Before this, only one exorcist had ever been killed. So the hotel having that power and that strength in ending the exorcisms was huge. There were lots of reporters and the hotel was getting lots of attention, and there was so much news and lots of people there for the wrong reason, just because they wanted to fight angels.
Is it true this hotel is recruiting a hellish army?
Also, at the start of Season 2, Episode 1, we see that the V's are extremely successful and they decide to want to set their sights on conquering heaven. This would be a new move for the V's because prior to this, they were running a successful media empire and they each had their own branch. So wanting to go after heaven, brand new idea. Back at the hotel, Charlie doesn't know Serpentius was redeemed, so she's grieving the loss of Serpentius, and she's really at a breaking point under the stress and pressure and questioning whether her dreams can be successful. Charlie's biggest fear is that she's failed everyone and will continue to do so. Meanwhile, Heaven is trying to figure out how redemption could have happened. Sarah, who originally started the exorcist attacks, is trying to grapple with the fact that she put exterminations on the map and started the exterminations, but human souls can improve. So how can she face that and atone for the fact that she let thousands of human souls be killed in hell when they could have gone better like Serpentius did? She makes the challenging and critical decision to lock down heaven just in case the demons and the sinners decide to retaliate against heaven for all the exterminations. While heaven is shutting down, Emily, another angel in heaven, comes down to tell Charlie that Penchas was redeemed. Armed with that new knowledge, Charlie invites Vox Tech to interview her about the hotel. Vox and Velvet show up in person when they'd expected reporters instead of them, but they got the two Vs, and threaten to leave when Charlie can't prove redemption's possible, because she couldn't prove it because Penchas isn't at the hotel, he's up in heaven. So Charlie promises that she's gonna redeem a soul in front of them live on TV. Of course that fails spectacularly, and she cannot redeem a soul live on TV, so the press gets worse and there's even more pressure on the hotel, and there's a throwaway line around this point that Vox Tech is taking in sinners that were alienated by the hotel and its mission to help souls.
The V's are now offering sanctuary to all those affected by Charlie Morningstar's actions.
While Charlie and the hotel are crumbling, the V's are amassing power. Vox makes a deal with Alistair, which is a big deal for Vox because he's always wanted to best him, and Alistair has to join the V's and join in what they're doing, and they're rallying other overlords to join them in their fight against heaven and in this huge resistance movement with Vox at the helm. Because Charlie is falling apart under pressure, Vaggie tells Lucifer that he has to stop Vox from discrediting the hotel and putting that pressure on her. So, when Vox is having a massive media rally, Lucifer shows up to threaten to smite him. Vox proves he can't, and then Vox immediately after that declares war on heaven, just fully making good on all the strength that he's garnered throughout this season. To further drag the hotel down, Vox hypnotizes Angel Dust into speaking badly of the hotel and speaking in favor of the V's. He then manipulates Carmilla Carmine into making a huge weapon which will use Lucifer as a power source, and he fires upon heaven, destroying the pearly gates. With that success, Vox feels like he's basically at the top of his game, and Vox invites a bunch of sinners and overlords to a massive party at V-Tower to show off his weapon, show off his strength, and really maximize his approval rating to give it that last little boost he needs to be able to go after heaven. At the party, Alistair manipulates Vox into breaking the deal that he had made with him, and he also escapes his own deal that was holding him back for the first 2 seasons. With Alistair unbound from his deal and Vox really angry that he failed to beat him and that he lost and kind of lost the deal, Vox and Alistair get in a huge fight, and when Vox fails to defeat him, he resorts to having to use the weapon to attack Alistair, ends up blowing up parts of hell, and then accidentally shoots Emily and singes her wings. The weapon's about to blow up, and the V's get involved and basically tell Alistair that
You are not fucking killing us over that stupid deer!
It's over, you dumb fuck!
he's not gonna destroy them to kill Alistair, so they intervene and rip Vox's head off his body. Everyone comes together to destroy the weapon, including the V's minus Vox. Sir Penchas is able to broadcast to hell that he is in heaven, proving that redemption is possible, and backing up the hotel's mission. Valentino and Velvet leave with Vox, although I would like to call out the fact that it looks like they get inside V-Tower, and then Val just throws Vox's head aside, but I'm not really sure if that was inside or outside, but I just kind of want to call that out because it sets up a lot of questions about Season 3, which I'll be saving for a future video. But it looks like they brought him back inside, threw him aside, and that's basically the end of his arc, and one of the last things we get is learning that Vox Tech is probably going to change its name, and it looks like Val is at the helm.
Vox Tech, we might need to change our company name.
And the hotel actually becomes popular for the right reasons. All this said, though, I was confused because I couldn't figure out what the primary B-plot of this season was. Was it Charlie dealing with her grief and pressure of the misinformation about the hotel? Vox sure does a lot of hard work to discredit it. There's a few scenes where they are telling everyone that Charlie's a dictator.
It seems Morningstar wants to create a hostile environment where she forces sinners to change and fit into her restrictive, puritanical mold.
They have a scene where I think Velvet specifically lies about the hotel in a silhouetted interview.
When we arrived at the hotel, the vibe was definitely off. I remember walking in and Charlie coming at me with an open fist. Next thing I knew, she struck me.
And it gets so bad that Charlie is trying to contact Emily to try to get proof that redemption's possible and to stop Vox from doing his evil bidding. But there's another subplot where Alistair's deal with Rosie is explored and then later broken. So I'm trying to figure out which one of these things are the primary B-plot. Or are neither of them the primary B-plot? Alistair's arc is the only one that gets resolved. You get to see that he has his deal with Rosie, you get to understand how that deal was made, and you get a fairly satisfying way of seeing it broken through Alistair exploiting a backdoor in the deal. So both these plots get wrapped up, but it's hard to see if Alistair's subplot is supposed to be the primary B-plot or not. He doesn't get much screen time, and the most screen time he gets, he's just manipulating Vox and leading to Vox eventually having his own hubris be his downfall in the final battle. So you don't really see him working out of his deal. You see a few little things that build up to it, but not much. So while he is a focus, especially in the latter half of the season, you don't really get to see much of that leading up to that eventual breaking of the deal. More interestingly, there were some subplots that seemed like they were either dropped or started and then put off for a future season. So they only got one song or a little bit of time dedicated to them, maybe a few lines, maybe a few things of interest, but they're not really explored or they don't really tell us too much about the future of the characters and where things are going to go. So I want to call those out and talk about these plots, why they were introduced in season 2 or brought up in season 2 or handled in season 2 when they weren't really made good on throughout the season. Season 2's primary problem was its pacing, because it introduced a lot of subplots that I believe were introduced like a carry into future seasons and be a thing in future seasons, but I wanted to discuss them here, and they'll come up again later in this video, at least most of them will, but I just want to bring them up and discuss them because I think they're important to call out as subplots I'm really excited about, but I wish that we'd gotten better payoff within this season, at least a little more than one song or a few lines. So the first of these is Lute's anger towards the sinners who killed Adam and the hallucination that she has of Adam. Lute is one of the exorcists, she was the lieutenant, and she is really angry that the hotel managed to kill Adam, but it's like that gets a song, gets attention, and you see her arguing with Seraphim and trying to defy orders, but it just doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't amount to anything. She just basically gets told to sit down every time she starts arguing. So I know that's probably going to come up later, but I wanted to call it out as something that started really hard in season 2 and I'm really excited for it, but I wanted more payoff than what we got. The second subplot of interest was Cherry Bomb discovering that she actually loves Serpentius. In return, he loved her, and then she's discovering that she also loved him, so she decides to stay at the hotel. That one had reasonable enough payoff because it led to her decision to stay there and maybe start working towards redemption, but then the rest of the season focuses more heavily on how she's helping Angel Dust instead of focusing on wanting to build her relationship with Pentious. So I wanted to call this one out as something that also could have gone a little more characterization. The V's are running a really terrible media empire that takes people in and spits them back out. All the V's work together to basically take souls who are at the bottom and build them up and give them movie deals and all this other exposure, and then after they are unwanted, they get tossed back out. And that gets a whole song dedicated to it, as do the previous two plots I've just mentioned, and I know I'm going to touch on this later, but I wanted to see more of the V's being the V's and doing their thing, because I thought it was cool that they were reintroduced in season 2 as this media force to be reckoned with, only for it to not really go anywhere. So yeah, like I said, I'm gonna come back to these subplots and more in the music section next, but I never felt like the subplots in season 2 were strong enough to identify a clear B plot or a clear area of focus to go up against the A plot. Things happened until they kind of stopped or were hinted that they'd continue into the next season, but they just weren't satisfyingly handled within season 2 itself. I want to take some time now to talk about the characters in season 2, especially the main players. I'm not going to touch on everyone, but I want to highlight a few motivations and areas that I didn't feel were totally fleshed out, or areas that intrigued me and I wanted to see more of. So I want to start with the V's. Vox is central to season 2. You can't talk about it with talking about his actions and how he's trying to lead this rally against Heaven. His goal is to take over heaven. But the funny thing is, all we know about why is because he wants to feel like a god. We learned that he feels like he's never satisfied and the grass is always greener and he always needs more, he always needs something bigger, and he always wants to achieve more. Valentino and Velvet both express how this will help their ventures and how taking over heaven will help their specific ventures within their empire. Velvet talks about how it's going to help her fashion empire, and Val talks about how it can contribute to his studio. But Vox just wants power, and in fact, when Valentino asks him, how are we going to get to heaven, or how are we going to take over heaven, or why should we take over heaven, Vox dismisses it as semantics. So therefore, we don't really know what taking over heaven means to Vox. If it means getting up there, there's a whole song about that, but if it means literally getting up to heaven, he can't do that. The only way we ever see to get to heaven is through portals. Portals that people in heaven, specifically I think the Seraphim and the Exorcist, can open. So it's hard to believe that he wants to get up there and be up there and stay up there. It's unclear if he wants to take it over and have a portal open so you can get there. It's also not clear what he means by taking over. If it's a political takeover, that's kind of strange as well, because he'll never have full power. There's still the speaker of God who he'd have to contend with, and there's also divine judgment and just things he can't really interfere with because they're above his sphere of influence. So what it means to take over heaven, does that just mean expanding their reach, having angels worshiping them, having some sort of thing where they're making angels fall and become more corrupt? I mean, that kind of goes in line with what Val seems to suggest he wants. But what does it mean to take over heaven? This goal is kind of just nebulous and not really explored. We know he wants power, but that's it. So while this season showed that he has charisma and the ability to twist information and manipulate and get further and get a backing behind this idea of taking over heaven and gain revenge on heaven and having a war on heaven, it's just, for what, a bragging right? I really would have liked to know more about what taking over heaven means for Vox and how Vox wants to approach this and how he'll know his goal is complete. What is his end game? That's what I really wanted to ask the whole season. The last thing I kind of want to call out about Vox's character is his treatment of the other Vs. We know that Vox has the unique ability to keep them in line, and we see this in season 1 with their respect for him, and I'm going to touch on this more later, but in season 2, he spends the season alienating them, in part because Alistair is manipulating him and needling his fragile ego until he pushes them aside.
So, maybe you should reflect a little, okay?
Fucking motherfucker! Ay, ya no puedo con este.
You know I can't understand you when you speak that island language, Val.
The interesting thing with that, though, is that it doesn't really lead to results. And I'm going to talk about this again, like I said, in the what I'd fix section of this video. But I wanted to call it out as just another subplot with Vox's character that could have been better fleshed out. Another set of characters I want to talk about are Charlie, Vaggie, and everyone else at the hotel. Charlie starts the season by just giving me straight up whiplash. She's constantly switching between grief and a passion for her hotel, which turns into a lot of foolish decision making down the line, where she ignores advice from Angel, Vaggie, and goes off on her own a lot, which seems counter to her role in season 1.
Charlie, what the unholy fuck?
Fox is probably broadcasting to Val, and you still let them in here? I'm telling you right now, they are bad fucking news.
What's really interesting, though, is that in season 1, cohesion was so important to Charlie that she violated Angel Dust's boundaries to follow him to work to ask Val to give Angel more time off so he could be at the hotel more and do more hotel activities.
I have come to aggressively kindly speak with you about Angel. Later, of course. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of your work.
So the fact that Charlie was so in everyone's business and really caring about the hotel throughout season 1 and caring about everyone, and now in season 2 she's off doing her own thing to fight the media circus, is just kind of frustrating and weird. It's different. Additionally, the whole gang at the hotel seems a little fragile in season 2. By the end of season 1, everyone stayed for the extermination, which surprised Vaggie and Charlie and impressed them. They weren't expecting it. And in the very end of season 1, everyone joins hands to help rebuild the hotel because they're all committed to it. In season 2, however, everyone's just kind of mad at each other, and a lot of progress from season 1 seems to be undone by the time season 2 episode 3 comes around. One major example of this is when Husk is tied to railroad tracks and Angel is supposed to be redeeming himself, so he has to save Husk. Angel succeeds, and then Husk gets mad at him for saving him, and I understand that this is because Husk doesn't feel like he's worth saving like that, or isn't worth Angel putting his life at risk. But the fact that he has a hard time communicating this with Angel Dust kind of conflicts me, because I thought the whole point of Loser Baby in season 1 was to address those complexities in the relationship and allow them to be more open and honest with each other. So I thought that that was kind of frustrating that that's not a thing that comes up. It's just Husk being mad at Angel, and it doesn't get resolved for a great number of episodes later, almost near the end of the season, when Angel goes to Husk and asks, "Are you still mad at me?" So that lack of communication between them felt like a huge step back from where they were. Additionally, during season 1, Charlie and Vaggie had a lot of trust building. There was a moment where Charlie learned that Vaggie was an exorcist, and that broke her trust for a while. And so a huge arc in season 1 was them learning to trust each other and communicate better and express their feelings better and recognize they both have the same goals in mind. In season 2, Vaggie is repeatedly warning Charlie not to trust the V's and to not listen to them. And throughout all of those warnings, Charlie kind of ignores her and, like I said, does her own thing. So season 2 actually has this line where Charlie says,
If you don't care about what I'm trying to do, then I can just do it myself.
and the problem with Charlie not listening to Vaggie and not respecting her help and her attempts to help her is that it undoes that trust building from season 1, where Charlie specifically said
That she believes in me and what we're doing? Right now, she's off learning how to protect everything we've worked for.
And also within this season, we have both Husk and Alistair quitting their jobs at the hotel at different points in the season and kind of just step back and say they're not doing it anymore.
That's it. Fuck this. I quit.
So the season really just hinges on everyone kind of breaking their relationships with the hotel, ruining their relationships with lots of fighting and arguments that seem like they shouldn't have come after season 1's character development. And all this rash decision making on everyone's part seems like it just stems from the fact that the season isn't about the hotel, but still has to have some focus on the hotel because the show is called Hazbin Hotel. So whatever it shows has to somehow stand up on its own as a B or at least a subplot to show something interesting happening there while you're also watching Vox's takeover of heaven. But the interesting thing is that nothing that's going on at the hotel is as interesting as what Vox is doing, probably due to the different stakes. In fact, I think Husk's line sums it up perfectly.
Enough! I'm so fucking done with this petty high school bullshit.
It's hard to see where these plots come together, because at some point it seems like they're really related and then they fall away from each other and they just both seem to be telling completely different stories. Vox goes to the hotel in the beginning of season 2, and that really amounts to him revealing Angel's sin and why he's in the hotel. And after that, and after Charlie ruins her hotel's reputation a few times, that whole plot of Vox being at the hotel is sidelined. But I guess you can make the argument that Vox went to the hotel because he needs to break Charlie. He needs to ruin Charlie's reputation to lure out Lucifer, to show all of hell that Lucifer is nothing, so that Vox can elevate his own image as the
King of Hell.
But my problem with this is that Vox starts this movement against the hotel before he even knows that Lucifer can't smite him. He also starts this before knowing anyone is going to get Lucifer involved, because no one seems to be interested in getting Lucifer involved, and in fact Lucifer isn't even really there or present. I guess he's there and present, but not, Vox doesn't see him when Vox goes to the hotel. So I don't know how Vox's plan just conveniently fell into place where he bashed the hotel long enough that Lucifer, who just happened to not be able to smite him, showed up to show that Vox is stronger than Lucifer so that he could amass his power. So everything seemed a little generous in this respect, and I just kind of would have liked a little more cohesion between these two plots and these two ideas, and a little more focus on the hotel that would have been more interesting than the petty drama that we got. Two other characters I have to talk about are Alistair and Rosie. We learned that Alistair's deal from season 1 was made with Rosie, who is the overlord of Cannibal Town. Alistair spends season 2 trying to break the deal, and also wants Rosie to fix his staff because he feels powerless without it, and has really been making himself scarce and making Vaggie pick up the slack at the hotel because he doesn't have it. He becomes far more central to the plot after making his deal with Vox, because he's a huge part of Vox's unraveling. We get to see this really huge, masterful build-up to him ending all his deals that subjugated him in the end of the season, by showing him getting out of his deal with Rosie and his deal with Vox, and it all comes together in a very satisfying single scene where Alistair is even able to say,
Your little power grab helped break another chain that's been holding me back for quite some time.
While this was one of the only complete subplots in season 2, I do want to call out the fact that I was a little conflicted about how it came together. I'll talk more about Alistair and Rosie's relationship in my music section, but I want to state here that I just find it great that this was a subplot that finally got a conclusion, but I feel like there are ways it could have been improved. The last group of characters I want to talk about are the angels in heaven. There's a great conflict and a great contrast between Seraphim's guilty notions regarding instating the Exorcist army in the first place against Lut's feelings that hell needs to be punished for killing Adam. It's really cool to see Seraphim struggling with guilt and Lut struggling with anger. They're both grieving, and they're both grieving in a very different way, and they're both handling their emotions very differently, where Seraphim wants to become more pacifistic and Lut becomes more angry. It's a really nice parallel. But my problem with it is that it feels like a really one-sided game of tug of war, where Seraphim's orders are absolute. And no matter how many times Lut expresses her anger, both to Seraphim and to the Speaker of God, and to Abel, and expresses her anger to basically anyone who will listen, she just keeps getting told to stop, or it's treason, or any number of things to make her stop fighting back against heaven's orders.
We need to go down
Lut, silence! Lut, enough! Call off any of your plans, or it will be seen as treason. Let me stop you right there.
To me, this flaw comes from a hierarchical structure in heaven, where because Lut is part of the Exorcist army, she has no power to defy Seraphim. She has no power to defy Abel after he's put in control as the new head of the army. So she really can't do anything, and she has to take these orders because she's effectively a soldier. Problem is, I just really wanted to see her defect and do her own thing and really give in to that anger and choose that act of treason that Seraphim warned her about. I know it's going to come in a later season, and Lut is going to rise up eventually, but it's just not present here, even though they made a focus on it and even gave Lut a song about it. I'll be talking about that later. But I just wanted to talk about how frustrating it is to see this really awesome build-up with very little payoff, aside from Lut arguing a few times and trying to defy orders a few times, only to listen when she's basically told to shut up and go sit in a corner. I thought some really good characterization about the angels came in the form of their naivety, and this was expressed when they decided to apologize for the exterminations with gift baskets. So the angels are shown to be really naive, and they're actually really proud of their contributions to the gift basket. It just shows that they don't understand the consequences, or at least the grasp of what they have done. They know that they did something terrible, and they know the extermination should have never happened, but they don't understand how such an innocent gesture of admitting that you're wrong and apologizing is not exactly going to be received well, because the apology doesn't fit the crime committed. So I did really enjoy that, and I had to call it out because it was one of my favorite moments in this season. But one thing was really missing insofar as the angels are concerned, and that was some sort of retaliatory attack when Vox blew the pearly gates off heaven. That would have been a great moment for Archangel Michael to come down with his flaming sword and try to smite them for destroying heaven or launching an attack on heaven, and just doesn't happen. So the Heaven Defense Force is just missing, and a lot of pieces just don't seem like they're there. It feels like anyone could have attacked heaven at any time and would have succeeded because there's no retaliatory force. Perhaps it's a point that the show is trying to make, is that Heaven would just never expect this to happen, but I wanted to call it out because it just felt like a good opportunity to show some of Heaven's might and its anger beyond Lute's anger, but some of Heaven's actual anger and ability to fight back beyond the Exorcists that would have added more stakes to the season. So I think we're going to see more of the Archangels in season 3, but it's just not... But just felt like it was missing from season 2. The fact that Heaven didn't really have a defense force makes it seem like anyone of Lucifer's strength, or who is harnessing Lucifer's strength, or all of hell together and powered under Lilith, which we learn about her doing, it seems like that sort of power could threaten Heaven. And so you would think Heaven would have a better defense structure or defense force in place. Not just the Exorcist, but like Archangel Michael, or another Archangel who's defending Heaven, especially because Heaven has felt threatened before. Threatened enough to start the Exorcist army. Considering Hell has threatened Heavens before, I'd like to see something that was actually defending it, and some retaliatory force from the Pearly Gates spell. So aside from the A-plot, a lot of characters just felt underutilized. There were some excellent subplots for these characters, especially with Alistair, but a lot of other subplots just kind of started up and went nowhere or are being put off to a future season. So I'm going to highlight that more with my next section when I talk about the music. Hazbin Hotel's musical format makes the show catchy and engaging, and again puts its own twist on the story and method of storytelling. Season 1 followed the perfect formula. Every song served to advance the main plot or develop our understanding of characters and their relationships within the hotel and even outside the hotel. The show opens up with Happy Day in Hell, which shows Charlie's excitement and passion and belief that she can actually make hell a better place by having her hotel that redeems sinners. This contrasts so well with the very next song, Hell is Forever, in which the viewer learns that the exorcists love the exorcisms. So when Charlie tries to pitch her hotel to make their trip down to hell to disappear, when she tries to make that pitch, they are not receptive to it. They enjoy what they're doing, and in fact move the next extermination up. And it really cements the idea that Charlie's a bit naive and a bit innocent and really excited about something, and she's going to be met with this challenge. So it sets up the plot perfectly for the season and establishes exactly what Charlie's goals are and what the Angel's goals are and how those motivations are going to clash. And then that's the build-up for the entire season, carrying you through to the entire season until that extermination actually happens. So it creates a timeline and a deadline, and you see the pressure mounting throughout the season because these two songs established the goal that Charlie has and the threat she is facing. The song More Than Anything was Lucifer finally putting his fear of failure aside to join on Charlie's belief in the hotel. He'd kind of abandoned his belief in sinners.
Sinners are violent psychopaths, hell-bent on causing as much pain and destruction as they can. There's really no point in trying.
Dad, stop!
This was a big step for Lucifer, who had inspired Charlie before, and she even tells him as much, but he had lost his faith in sinners because he was sent to hell, so he would never see the good he caused through giving people free will. Later, More Than Anything is reprised to show Vaggie and Charlie coming back together after a period of distrust and self-doubt to stand together and defend the hotel from extermination, showing their renewed belief in the hotel, whereas its intro, More Than Anything with Lucifer and Charlie, was someone coming on board. This song was reinvigorating them and bringing them back together. While those songs pushed along the main plot, Loser Baby allowed Husker and Angel to come together after many episodes of tension that stemmed from self-hatred and their own insecurities that prevented them from really seeing through that and getting to know each other. This song allows them to open up and relate to each other by realizing they have more in common than they thought. This relationship building then is shown throughout the rest of the season, with Husk showing support for Angel and his good decisions and having more faith in his ability to make these decisions. And he supports him with comments like this.
It was worth it.
Way to go, kid.
Meanwhile, season 2 advances the main plot with songs like Bad With Us and Vox Populi, which both showcased Vox garnering support until it culminated in a successful rally against Heaven, and immediately after, Vox Day served as a war declaration on Heaven. All these songs together showed the V's, and especially Vox, amassing his power and leading into his attack and his final climax of his skills and ability. However, there were a good number of songs that either don't advance a viewer's knowledge of a character, or didn't carry enough within the season and led to a drop subplots, or just simply didn't pan out. The song existed and it was fun, and then nothing really came of it, so the song didn't need to exist in its current format. For instance, Hazbin Guarantee served as a reintroduction to the hotel. You get to see Charlie's vision, and then it also shows her questioning her ability to serve the hotel and to make sinners happy and to actually complete her dreams because Serpentius died. Charlie is not sure if his death constitutes as a failure. The problem I had with this song is that the positive parts of Hazbin Guarantee outweigh the negatives. I'd say the song is 90% about Charlie's dreams and success and promising the hotel will help rehab sinners, while the rest of it is her self-doubt, and that's a very, very small portion of the song. I feel like this song really recapped Happy Day in Hell and didn't give us anything new. We already know she wants to have a hotel to rehab sinners, and she's already sang about that in Hell a million times. Whether or not anyone's listening to her is besides the point.
But just don't sing to them. That bitch is halfway down the street. Is she? Oh, she's dancing. No.
She knows her dream and her mission and has talked about it incessantly, so Hazbin Guarantee is really a repeat of that for the sinners who are now in the hotel. What could have fixed this song is to have it focus more heavily on her self-doubt and her struggling with this grief over Serpentius, but then realizing I need to carry on and I need to move forward because this was me making my mom proud and carrying forward on my vision. So if they'd flipped the script a little and had it start out with this self-doubt and grief and uncertainty and then build into something like Hazbin Guarantee, I think it would have been far more important to the plot and showing that Charlie is really going to hang in there and try to be strong and back her vision. Hazbin Guarantee is juxtaposed against the V's reintroduction, Trust Us. Trust Us is really great because it serves as a strong, interesting commentary on the media industry, almost as it is in real life. It shows the V's luring sinners in so that they could try to reinvent them and make them lucrative. So you get to see them gain movie deals and social media and all this other backing, and then as soon as they're not useful anymore, they're cast aside.
Snip, 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 bitch.
I thought this was really cool because you got to see something about the V Empire. It served as a good reintroduction after season 1 and reminding yourself, oh yeah, the V's are formidable and they have this thing going on and it's working out really, really well. The problem is, during the very next scene you see the V's in, they're already talking about overtaking Heaven, and you don't really get to see anything come of Trust Us. They aren't really doing this for the rest of the season. What I wanted to see was that the sinners that they were using and abusing, leaving them and going to the hotel out of desperation because they have nothing left after the V's are done with them, but we didn't even see that. So I was conflicted because Trust Us, while a great song and a super good representation of the media industry, didn't go anywhere and didn't amount to anything and wasn't really built upon. So I liked it to see what the characters are like, but I wish we saw more of that from these characters because that is where their strength lies. The song Gravity is a total 10 out of 10. Lute is hallucinating that Adam is still around, and she's having a complete breakdown and expressing her desire for revenge against the sinners. She wants to kill all of them and even states as much, and she especially wants to take out Charlie or Vaggie to show them what it's like to lose a loved one, because those are the feelings that she left unsaid for Adam. She loved Adam. While I know Lute's plot isn't done yet, it needed more payoff within season 2 itself. Like I said before, in season 2, a lot of the times you see her, she's pouting off on the side, or she's arguing, or she's yelling at people, even people she shouldn't be arguing with, like the Speaker of God, and like Sarah, and people she has absolutely no ability to fight with because of the hierarchy in heaven. And it just seemed like there was this big missed opportunity for her to actually put that anger to use. I wanted to at least see her try to go off and do her own thing. Even if she eventually gets called back and has to finish it later, it would have showed some sort of build-up from this excellent song and this excellent arc that expresses her anger in her grief. And I would have liked to have seen that because Sarah seems to try to get her ability to atone during the season, but Lute's anger never really gets the same payoff or justification or anything really built into it. So while Sarah gets to experience her complete growth of atonement and self-acceptance and starting to make better decisions, Lute, who's also grieving, doesn't get to go anywhere. She just has to keep getting pushed aside and her anger being pushed aside, and nothing happens. So I know this is going to come up again. I know it's so important to the plot and the story that's being told throughout Hazbin Hotel, so it's going to come up in seasons 3 and 4, but I wanted more in season 2 as opposed to just a reference back to Gravity in Hear My Hope. It needed more strength, and Lute's character missed a golden opportunity to shine. So I found that frustrating this season, and I wanted to see more come of it. Another great song in season 2 is Don't You Forget. It's fun, and it's a song between Alistair and Rosie. The song starts because Alistair goes to Rosie to tell her he decided to quit working at the hotel. And Rosie sings a song to remind him that he cannot leave because she has a deal with him, and so he is bound to her will.
The moves you make are mine and mine alone.
But then Alistair does just go off on his own and handle Vox and make a deal with Vox and gets his deal with Rosie broken. I don't even think he goes back to the hotel once after this song. And the whole point of the song was, you can't quit working there because I'm telling you to work there. So why does this song exist? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and the most I could come up with was because it's reprised later on in the same episode. It's reprised because Vox makes a deal with Alistair, subjugating Alistair, so then Vox gets to sing it to Alistair. And that's really fun because it bleeds into a reprise of Stayed Gone to showcase how the power dynamic has shifted, where now Vox is on top and Alistair is now lower, whereas with Stayed Gone in season 1, Alistair defeated Vox. So I understand that parallel, but I feel like the first Don't You Forget could have been handled better. What if Vox were at the hotel spreading misinformation or trying to carry on a subplot, or maybe he needed there to go manipulate Angel Dust in order to hypnotize him, and so he was at the hotel, and that's why Alistair went back to the hotel, was one to help the hotel because Rosie told him he has to, and then also Vox is there, creating the space for Alistair to make that deal with Vox. It just seems weird that Rosie says, you can't quit working at the hotel, go back there, and then Alistair just doesn't. The other way Don't You Forget could have been better utilized is swapping out Alistair's version with Rosie with a version of Alistair convincing Rosie he's handling things in a better way than she even realized he was, subtly manipulating her into kind of going along with his vision and agreeing with him that, okay, maybe you don't have to go off to help the hotel, help it some other way. But it just feels like this song was underutilized because it's her telling him to get in line, and then he doesn't. So it's a song that's fun and catchy, but it, again, doesn't amount to much within the season. The song Piss is a duet between Cherry Bomb and Penchus, wherein Cherry Bomb discovers that she loved Penchus. This song results in her decision to stay at the hotel. Before that, she was wishy-washy and on the fence about it. But during the scene, when the V's show up and Charlie recommends redeeming a soul live on TV, Cherry Bomb's just nowhere to be seen, and Angel Dust gets picked for redemption instead. I thought this was really weird because it's in the same episode, and I figured that this would have been a good opportunity for Cherry Bomb to realize she really wants redemption because she wants to be in heaven with Sir Penchus, and she's really going to give this whole thing a shot, not just get her room, but actually work towards redemption and take full advantage of the fact that the hotel exists. This would have been a great opportunity for Cherry Bomb to have the follow-through of not just agreeing to be at the hotel, but to also volunteer herself for redemption. It seems like because this didn't happen, the whole reason the V's went to the hotel was so Vox could reveal Angel Dust's reason for being in hell.
Exercise could one do to be forgiven for being
Stop!
murderer?
It feels like their being there only amounted in learning about Angel Dust's sin, which I figured could come out in so many different ways. Vox could have put that on blast throughout hell. Vox could have told Charlie that in some sort of expose. Anything could have happened to reveal that information better, so this could have been better utilized as Cherry Bomb attempting to be redeemed and just not really being ready for it. It didn't have to be a much-loved character like Angel Dust getting volunteered towards redemption, when it could have been someone like Cherry Bomb. If that's not a ship, it should be. Where this could have been a really good opportunity for Cherry Bomb to blow the viewers away by actually giving them a little more characterization on her part. Instead, she's used throughout the rest of the season. Her love for Serpentius doesn't really come up again until the very last episode, and the rest of the season more so focuses on her helping Husk get Angel Dust back from the V's. So it's not really all that effective because sure, she loves Serpentius, and I'm sure that's going to come up later, and we're going to see her working towards redemption later, but this could have given us really great insight into how she responds to being coaxed towards redemption, especially with the song Speedrun to Redemption, where you could have seen her having to go through all those motions and getting really frustrated because guess what? She's at 0. She is nowhere near redemption ready, but she wants it really badly. And that could have been a really cool characterization moment and decision, but I think we got something more plot convenient instead. The last song I want to talk about is Love in a Bottle. I love this song. It is fun. Husk leaves the hotel and goes to one of his old casinos, and he's drinking and gambling and living it up like he always used to. And like he always used to before he made his deal with Alistair. The problem here is that everyone has already said Husk is a drunk.
Who saw that coming?
And Husk already admitted that
I was an overlord once, you know. But when you're dealing in souls, while also being a gambler, the stakes are pretty high.
So the viewer's aware of the fact that he's a drunk, the characters are aware of the fact that he's a drunk, and so this song doesn't really go anywhere because I don't learn anything new about Husk except for that he's spiraling, something I could have just as easily seen in some sort of montage or a different way of telling me this, or I could have learned something new about his drinking and his gambling, like maybe he hasn't been allowed to gamble ever since he sold his soul to Alistair, and the only reason he can now is because Alistair's not around. It could have been something where I learned a bit more about his deal and a bit more about why it was making him so crazy to have this deal and why he's so angry about it and why he's so happy to be on his own is to be away from this deal with Alistair. But it just didn't come up, and all I heard from Love in a Bottle is that Husk is a drunk who likes to live it up and gamble when he's not at work and when he's not being forced to work at the hotel for Alistair anymore. So I want a little more characterization out of this. It's then followed up with Losing Streak, which is in a way kind of like Loser Baby, because it's Angel coming forward and singing about being at a low point and kind of like how you're at your losing streak and it's a shame, and it's kind of what gets Angel and Husk talking again. My problem is I feel like both these songs could have been combined into something that's like a reprise of Loser Baby. It could have been another duet, and this time it could have been Angel Dust initiating that in the same sort of powerful way that Husk initiated Loser Baby in the first place, showing that they both have each other's backs instead of Husk being the responsible one. It would have showed growth on both their parts to come back together. I suppose you can say Losing Streak is Angel's version of coming forward and stepping up and recognizing what Husk is going through, and that Husk is spiraling, and it's such a shame, but it's hard to accept that this song really has the same impact and the same handle on their relationships that Loser Baby did. It feels like a step back instead of just reaffirming what we already know. While a lot of the songs in Season 2 were really fun and I greatly enjoyed them, it just felt like they weren't executed as well because they didn't have the same payoff that every song in Season 1 had, and they didn't really give me an idea of the time frame in which they'd be addressed. In Season 1, for instance, I knew Stayed Gone was not going to be contained to the season. From the moment I heard that song, I knew that this was more of an underlying issue that was an underlying rivalry between Alistair and Vox, and it came up a few times in very successful ways in Season 1. You see the way those characters butt heads and how they feel about each other. So in a way, you didn't expect there to be a full arc about it. So in Season 2, when there was an arc about it, it was really great. because it actually showed that relationship amounting to something, and it was a little unexpected to see how it amounted to something and gave us context into their pasts. But I just felt like a lot of the songs in season 2 were set up, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for payoff that didn't come because I have to wait till seasons 3 or 4. And it would have been nice to have a little more self-contained payoff or a little more characterization in the case of something like Losing Streak and Love in a Bottle. So season 2 was good. There were a lot of pieces, and a lot of them were self-contained or didn't have the right payoff or whatever, but I think there was a lot of potential there. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how I would change some things to bring some plots better together and meld them stronger. I feel like a few of the biggest issues I had were that the plots were disjointed and the subplots weren't really as well defined, and Vox really just took the spotlight, but he didn't even have a complete arc. He rises to power through discrediting the hotel, and he rises to power through getting overlords on board with him, and his hubris is his undoing because he fails to see through wordplay with a deal that was made, and he basically kowtows to Alistair's manipulation into his eventual failure. But what's interesting is at the end of the seasons, the V's take him back. I know they throw him aside when they get to the tower, and again, I don't know if that's outside or inside, but they're at least carrying him away from everything. And to me, that shows that his arc is incomplete. His last lines are,
Well, seems like I got a little carried away. You guys know me, right?
Has my approval rating.
Which shows that he hasn't actually embraced or fully processed what's happened. He knows that he is basically dirt low at this point, but the V's are taking him back so he doesn't have to face the consequences yet. In season 3, I imagine we're gonna see a start of the season where Vox is being kept somewhere in the tower, or is being referred to for some sort of consultancy purpose, or is being asked questions, or is forced to watch his whole empire fall apart because Valentino doesn't have the skills to run a business like Vox did, because Vox is the one who always emphasized that the brand is perfection.
Think about it. Our brand is perfection. And what do you think chasing whores around town will do for our image?
So, given that Vox is the business-minded one, and Valentino and Velvet lack that skill set, I imagine he's gonna have to start watching his empire collapse. And then, at some point, he's gonna reach an even lower low than he's at right now, where he doesn't have his body. Maybe they'll even start season 3 where he does have a body, I'm really not sure. So, he's gonna have to fall even lower before his arc in season 3 really begins and he can start building himself back up. So to me, it's an incomplete arc in season 2 because he's not actually at the bottom. He's not actually at a full decline. He is part way to a decline, 90% of the way to a decline, but he's not there yet. So at least an episode, maybe 2 in season 3 are gonna have to show him falling even lower before he picks himself back up, which doesn't feel like a good, strong, compelling arc because you don't actually see this character go through the complete transformation from rising up and falling all the way down. So it's gonna be like his arc continues into season 3 and then we start to see the change in his character. What I would have changed about season 2 would have adjusted for this. I think the mold we could have had for a stronger season 2 would have a very defined A plot and B plot. The A plot would see Vox and the V's working together to get revenge on Heaven, to bolster their ratings and support in Hell. I don't like the idea of them trying to take over because it was nebulous and undefined. So what I'd like to see instead is them going out for revenge. Straight up what Heaven's afraid of. It is what Seraphim was afraid of during season 2, and it's what Lute was afraid of in season 2, and why Lute insisted that her anger was justified was because the sinners will seek revenge. I'm not just talking a war to try to take over Heaven, I'm just talking straight up destroy Heaven and exterminate there for revenge. And I think that they could have been doing that because they're a media empire and they know this will generate clout. So they're presenting it to sinners as, we're gonna have this fight against Heaven and we're gonna get revenge, and you all are going to feel satisfied because your anger against Heaven for the exterminations, that's going to be done. And meanwhile, the V's are looking towards their media empire and trying to build their ratings and build their clicks and their engagement and get more sinners to want to join in whatever media racket they're leading. So they pose it as a revenge scheme and pose it as the what's in it for you is revenge. and what's in it for them is the ratings. Meanwhile, I think the B plot could have been that Serpentius is miserable in heaven because he's lonely and can't make friends easily. This is what we see in season 2 that we got, is that Serpentius is lonely and just wants to see his friends. But it could have been strengthened if we also saw Adam in hell. Adam being in hell could have forced Lute to reconcile her anger and rage and revenge against sinners against her love for Adam, who is now one of them. And to top it all off, Adam would love being a sinner. He is debaucherous. He is terrible. He loves being bad.
Guitar solo, fuck yeah!
He enjoys killing, he enjoys sinful activities. You don't need to look far to see evidence of this. But while he was in heaven, he had to live by rules of not talking about the exorcist army, but he loved being an exorcist and loved the exterminations. So it's really complicated that Adam doesn't see himself as sinning, sees himself as a good guy with divine ordainment and liking to make these decisions. He would have been the perfect sinner. And if he were actually in hell, he would probably be living it up and surrounded by sinners who are like-minded, and he'd be enjoying every moment of it. Lute, on the other hand, thinks that angels don't make mistakes, and she says as much.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Angels don't make mistakes.
You really think that?
I know that.
So if Lute had this arc where Adam's in hell and Lute is angry and hates sinners and wants to kill them all and goes down to hell and sees Adam living it up, she'd have to reconcile that against her hallucinated version of Adam, who she holds on a pedestal. She'd also have to face the fact that what she loves and who she loves is a sinner. So you'd see the parallel between someone being unhappy in heaven and someone loving the lawlessness of hell. And you'd also see Lute's song Gravity come to a head and a centralized breakdown or centralized conflict for her as she realizes that maybe she doesn't hate all sinners or even all their values. So I think that this could have been a really interesting B-plot to parallel heaven and hell. One went up, one went down. The one that went up to the good place doesn't like it, and the one went down to the bad place likes it. And meanwhile, Lute has to reconcile the fact that she's been wrong about angels being infallible. So like I talked about earlier with season 2's plot, I'd like to actually break down what my ideal plot, at least the A plot, might have looked like. I would have totally kept Trust Us and kept the V's excelling with their media empire. I do really like how this song reintroduced the V's and reintroduced how they work together, and I think it would have been really powerful, especially if it had build up. As we know from season 2, episode 2 that we got, Emily goes down to hell. And she goes down because heaven's going on lockdown. She had to use a portal to get down there, just like all the other angels have to do to get down there. I think it would have been really interesting if she didn't make it back before heaven shut down. She would have been stuck in hell at the hotel with Charlie, and only Serpentius would know that she went. He'd have to wait maybe a week, maybe several weeks, to even get an audience with Sarah and or Lute or someone to tell them that Emily is stuck in hell and she went down there and never came back. This would have given Emily time to try to adjust to hell and suss her way around in a place where she's not really familiar with, and she's so naive that it would have been interesting to see how she responds to somewhere that is so sin-driven. The thing is, she would have been in the hotel. Charlie would have been watching out for her. It would have worked really well until the V's who are spreading misinformation show up. And then that's when Vox would learn that there's an angel, a really naive, innocent angel, at the hotel. This discovery would lead Vox to going back to the V's and deciding that they can set their sights on heaven because there's an actual angel they can use to up their game and go after heaven. And again, try to get revenge on heaven to bolster the ratings. This would bring When We Go Up There full circle by showing the V's actually formulating a plan around the fact that an angel is there instead of it coming out of nowhere. Vox, being incredibly charismatic, could have gotten Emily on his side. He could have told her he wants to interview heaven to show sinners how wonderful it is. He'd frame it as support for Charlie and the hotel, and something that would bring more sinners to the hotel to try to get redeemed. He would do this by playing into Emily's love for sinners and love for the idea of the hotel and love for the idea of redemption and all of Emily's hope. She is heaven's hope. This is where Trust Us would have made the viewer kind of like, ooh, this is a little weird, because you would see it playing in where the V's are going to start trust us in Emily. Emily would be really excited to trust Vox because it seems like he is positioning sinners as people who would want redemption and as writing this expose on heaven and being like, look, we all want to go there, it's gonna be great. So Emily would get right on board with that, and she would even possibly make some sort of deal with him through his own underhanded tactics. I know in the season 2 that we got, Alistair tricks Vox with wordplay. But what's interesting is during the whole first half of the season 2 we got, Vox is twisting Charlie's words and the hotel and its mission. And you see Katie Killjoy, who works for Vox, doing the same thing so that Charlie's hotel is kind of mocked and put down. This seems like it would be a good opportunity for Vox to use this in an actual deal fashion. And it would be the first time we actually see a deal exist with Vox. And I think that's really cool. So, if Vox had asked Emily something like, how badly do you want to redeem sinners? She would probably say she wants it with all her soul. And that could have turned into something really interesting where Vox then owns Emily. And Vox can use her, but he wouldn't really make a big deal about that yet. Around this point, Sarah and Lute would figure out what's been happening and realize that Emily is stuck in hell. Lute would be really upset that Emily's down there and think the sinners are out to trick her. She would be right, and the viewer would know she's right, and the viewer would be really worried for Emily. But Sarah, who wants to atone, would still be going through her arc thinking it's best to give the sinners a chance, and she would be trying to disregard Lute on the grounds that Lute is just paranoid about sinners and is just taking her feelings of Adam and just blowing them out of proportion because she's an exorcist and that's what she is. So Sarah would still be telling Lute to stand down and that she's wrong and that they have to see where this goes, while Lute would actually be correct, which would make her song Gravity have that full power and justification behind it because Lute is correct and Sarah doesn't realize it. So they'd go down there and they would find Emily with the V's, and they probably would have been showing her a great time in hell and taking care of her and helping her and manipulating her. Again, very covertly so that no one really sees it happening except for the hotel's probably suspicious, and I'm sure that Lute is just so angry to see this. But Emily would insist that they give Vox a chance to go up to heaven for a meeting or an interview or something to learn more about it because he wants to put heaven in a good light, which would give Sarah even more reason to tell Lute,
enough!
So Vox, and maybe even Charlie along his side, would go up to the hotel for a visit like Charlie had in season 1. He'd use his time in heaven to get a lay of the land. He'd use it to learn as much as he can about the winners who are in heaven. And he'd use his time there to learn about the angels and how judgment works. I mean, I know they don't know much about that, but he would love that they don't know much about that because he could really use that to his advantage when he is exposing heaven. Sarah says in season 2,
we know when a soul arrives. We know when they pass divine judgment.
And Vox would be able to look at that and say, heaven doesn't even know how it works, and they're all just abusing us. And they're all just putting us down here, and no one knows how it works, and it's unfair. Which would call back to Charlie's frustration in season 1, where no one knew what got a soul into heaven.
None of you know what gets someone into heaven?
It would call back to that, because now that information is in the worst person's hands. It is in the wrong person's hands, and someone who is going to use that information to really tear down the system. So Vox goes to heaven, and he learns as much as he can, and he still frames it as he's doing a good thing. Maybe around the end of this visit, he is able to show that he owns Emily's soul and has to drag her back down to hell, and there's nothing she can do about it. Or maybe even if he doesn't own her soul, he has some sort of power over her that he will not let go of. So now she is more of a prisoner or a hostage. At this point, they go back to hell, and Vox does his piece on heaven, and all the V's work together to exploit heaven, again, because their media empire is so powerful. The songs like Bad With Us and Vox Populi would still come into play because they are amassing power. Vox would also still get his deal made with Alistair, who tries to turn the V's against each other, but in this version, it wouldn't work. What's interesting about the V's as a unit, in season 1, you do see how they get along. You see that Vox can calm down Val and Velvet, and you see that they both rely on him. What's interesting about the idea of the V's is they're a cohesive unit. Vox is clearly in charge of the V's. He is the business-oriented mindset. He is the face of Vox Tech. His name is in Vox Tech. Vox is what basically is the image of their company and their empire. They are the content that he uses in Vox Tech. They all work really well together, but it's like they both kind of know that he's in charge, and he doesn't need to have this extreme hubris, and he doesn't need to alienate them for anything to come to a head. In fact, in season 2, instead of Alistair rattling the V's and leading to the "don't you mean us" trope, it could have been really interesting because Alistair was gone for 7 years. He missed the primary buildup of the V's. It seems to be semi-implied that Valentino and Vox had started their relationship before Alistair left, but Velvet is pretty new to the V's front. In fact, it's kind of implied that she's new to the Overlord game. Vox even says as much and she doesn't disagree. It would have been really interesting if Alistair thought this was just like any other deal and that everyone in hell is just as rattled, because Alistair strongly believes there are no friends in hell.
Friends? There are no friends in hell, Vincent.
Because he believes there's no friends in hell, he would probably believe he could rattle their trust and rattle this empire because they're all independently working and all independently doing their own things, only kind of working together out of necessity. So it would have been great to see Alistair trying to tear down what they've built, only for it to not work, because all the relationships are pretty firm and organized and they know their places within this empire. So it would have been cool to see Alistair try to rattle that trust, only for them to all still double down on their relationship. It would have been especially effective because at the end of season 2 that we got, there is no real betrayal. I guess, like, yeah, Val tosses Vox aside at the end of the season and expresses anger in him, but it's not like they left him outside. It's not like they hurt him. It's not like they cast him out completely. They still carried him back first. So to me, it would have been that's not really even a betrayal. They stopped Vox from destroying hell. They stopped Vox from killing them by fighting Alistair. It's not a betrayal. So it would have been better to see the trope broken down by having Vox and the V's stand strong even with Alistair's deal and Alistair's needling. By the time the V's and or Vox declares war on heaven for revenge, Lute would defy the orders to stand down and lead an extermination on hell because the sinners betrayed them and betrayed heaven with that piece Vox did to tear heaven down. She would have treated this as an act of war, and we need to get Emily back, and we need to do this, and sinners can't be trusted. This is what happens. I was right, and we need to fix this. And no, I will not wait 24 hours for Seraphim to come up with a peaceful resolution. I'm gonna do this. And so Lute would have led an extermination. She might have defied Abel for that, or had to drag Abel along to get him now involved in that and force him to come around to her point of view, in stating that her anger comes first. And this would have led into the B plot where she discovers that Adam is in hell and has to rectify that against her hallucination, which I honestly would have had been a bigger deal for her character throughout this version of the season, just on the side up until this point. While Lute is distracted by Adam and trying to rectify that whole situation of understanding Adam is a sinner, and maybe the fact that she likes a sinner means she's not so great herself either, the sinners are fighting back almost successfully against the angels and the extermination. Meanwhile, the hotel is fighting against the V's because they want Emily back as well, and they are on the angel side, just like we saw in season 2. They are fighting for Seraphim and Emily. By the time my proposed version of season 2 would come to a close, any deal Vox had with Emily would be undone and broken. The V's would be forced to cast Vox out to preserve their brand because he was so central to being the face of their empire for so long, and especially the face of this war effort. They can't have him in front. That would go against Vox's image of the V's being, again, perfection. So they know that Vox is no longer a valuable addition to the team. So they would cast him out. That would be his actual downfall. They would not be bringing him back. They would be leaving him or abandoning him. It would especially be a good opportunity for Val to maybe even say to Vox that he's doing this for perfection, which is what Vox always held in front of them as what they had to aspire to. You know, Vox, we can't keep you around because this is about perfection, and cast him out with his own words being his downfall. I'd still keep the idea of Alistair being unbound from Vox and Rosie by the end of the season as well. This would create a really interesting setup for season 3, where Alistair's at his peak and Vox, now cast out, is at his lowest points. This would be a similar parallel to what I would propose for my season 2 here, which is where Serpentius is in heaven and Adam is in hell. Going into season 3, we would now see Vox at his lowest and Alistair at his best. That's an implosion of the rivalry that has been set up since season 1 and really came to a head in season 2. So I'd like to see what growth would come from that going into season 3, instead of having to wait for Vox's downfall somewhere in season 3 to get to that point where we start to see a clash. So these were my ideas on how I would improve the plot and add a little more tension and add a little more parallels to the characters and their arcs and their journey throughout the season. I want to thank you so much for listening to me rant about Hazbin Season 2. I really liked making this video and thinking about it. This has been on my mind for days, so I had to do this. And I'm thinking of making a few theory videos. I have ideas I want to talk about with Angel Dust and ideas I want to talk about with Lilith. So I'll be making a few videos on those and maybe some broader, less fleshed out theories I just want to put out there because my brain just won't stop thinking about Hazbin Hotel. So if you're looking forward to those, stay tuned. Thank you for coming and listening to my video, and I hope to see you in the next one.